Welcome to Wise Visitor. Wise Visitor is a Hungarian-born digital content creator with a passion for introducing his viewers to fascinating countries and cultures. Although not a traditional travel vlogger, he takes his audience on unique journeys through the places he features, offering fresh perspectives and engaging storytelling. Recently, he moved to the stunning Azores Islands to see what life can offer him there. We love exploring the world with him, and today we're here to react, analyze, and have some fun with his latest adventure. So without further ado, let's dive into Wise Visitor's newest journey.
The history of present-day Uruguay began in the 16th century when Spanish sailors first landed in an area previously inhabited only by the Charrúa, and, in smaller numbers, Guarani indigenous people. By the 18th century, Montevideo, the future capital, had become an important Spanish port in the southern Atlantic. In the 19th century, Uruguay became a battleground in the conflicts between Brazil and Argentina, but from 1811, an independence movement emerged, resulting in the country's independence in 1828. At that time, the country's population was only 74,000. In the following decades, Uruguay experienced civil wars and political instability, followed by a brief economic boom in the mid-20th century, then dictatorships and political crises. The democratic transition occurred in the 1980s. Since then, Uruguay has become a stable democracy and one of Latin America's most developed countries. If you're interested in more fascinating facts about Uruguay, please stay with me, as I've gathered such details in this video.
So, Uruguay was basically the playground where Brazil and Argentina duked it out, like two neighbors fighting over whose barbecue smells better. And those 74,000 original Uruguayans, that's fewer people than some YouTube channels have subscribers today. Civil wars, economic booms, dictatorships. It sounds like Uruguay was running a simulation to see just how many dramatic plot twists you can fit into one country's history. And now, it's a stable democracy, like someone who partied way too hard in their youth, but eventually became the responsible adult at family gatherings. Kudos, Uruguay. While the text gives a nice summary, it glosses over the deeper struggles of indigenous peoples and barely acknowledges the long-term impact of colonialism. Framing the conflicts between Brazil and Argentina without exploring Uruguay's agency in its own fate makes it feel like a passive victim in history. Additionally, skipping over the human cost of civil wars and dictatorships simplifies complex historical traumas. The transition to democracy is celebrated, but what were the social conditions and reforms that truly stabilized the nation? A more nuanced approach could add weight to the narrative. Uruguay's journey from a contested territory to a stable democracy reflects the resilience of its people and the capacity for change. The ebb and flow of history, from colonization to civil strife to economic highs and lows, reminds us that nations evolve through both hardship and hope. It's remarkable how a small country, initially shaped by external forces, gradually forged its own identity and political path. The 20th century dictatorships were harsh lessons, but the democratic transition shows that even the most challenging chapters can lead to renewal. Uruguay's success today as one of Latin America's most developed countries demonstrates the power of perseverance and the importance of self-determination.
Uruguayans are predominantly of European descent, mainly descendants of Spanish and Italian immigrants from the 19th and 20th centuries, with fewer French and British settlers. Previously, settlers arrived from Argentina and Paraguay. Today, the population includes only a small number of mestizos, those of mixed European and indigenous ancestry, comprising less than 10% of the population. Blacks and mulattoes make up an even smaller percentage. The entire country speaks Spanish, though a mix of Portuguese and Spanish, called Portuñol, is spoken in Rivera and other border towns close to Brazil. Uruguay is the second smallest independent country in South America after Suriname, but it is still nearly twice the size of Hungary. This 173,000 square kilometer country has only 3.5 million people, making its population density far lower than Hungary's. While Hungary has 105 people per square kilometer, the South American country has just 20. Interestingly, nearly half of Uruguay's population lives in the capital, Montevideo, which is considered the continent's safest capital. Outside Montevideo, Uruguay has no significant cities. Even the second most populous settlement, Salto, has only about 100,000 inhabitants. Salto's main attraction is its claim to produce South America's finest oranges. The city is located on the banks of the Uruguay River, across from the Argentine city of Concordia. Its port supplies goods to northwestern Uruguay and some parts of Brazil. The country's name originates from the Guarani indigenous language, where Uruguay roughly means the river where colorful birds live. The name, of course, refers to the Uruguay River, the country's most important waterway. The Guarani tribes played a significant role in the region's history, as they were among the first inhabitants alongside the Charrua before the arrival of Europeans. At that time, Uruguay's total population was only between 5 and 10,000.
So basically, Uruguay is like Europe's little weekend getaway house that nobody else in South America knew about. The Spanish and Italians must have come down there thinking, what if we just make a smaller, quieter Europe by the beach? And then you've got Portuñol, like Spanglish's distant cousin that went on holiday to the Brazil-Uruguay border and never left. Also, let's not forget that Salto is bragging about oranges like it's the citrus capital of the universe. Respect to them, though, for finding their niche. With a population density that screams plenty of elbow room, it sounds like the entire country is socially distancing by default. The text paints a picture that focuses too much on Uruguay's European roots and glosses over the indigenous presence and cultural contributions. While it mentions the Guarani and Charrua tribes, it feels more like a footnote than a meaningful part of the narrative. The framing of the population diversity could also be more sensitive, as words like only a small number of seem to diminish the importance of minority groups. Additionally, the way Montevideo is highlighted as the only significant city unintentionally diminishes the value of the rest of the country. A deeper dive into the indigenous heritage and a broader recognition of Uruguay's smaller towns would add more balance and fairness. The story of Uruguay reflects a blend of cultures, migration, and resilience. The mention of European immigration highlights the waves of people seeking a better life, but it's also important to remember the indigenous roots that predate colonization. The population density figures offer an interesting contrast, suggesting that Uruguay offers a lifestyle far removed from the crowded bustle of other nations. The idea that nearly half the population lives in one city shows the importance of Montevideo not just as a capital, but as the country's cultural and social hub. Salto's oranges, while seemingly a quirky detail, illustrate the way even small places can find a way to stand out. Uruguay's name, derived from the Guarani language, serves as a poignant reminder that the river and the land carry histories far older than any European settlement.
Montevideo is the southernmost capital city in South America. There are two widespread legends about its name's origin. One claims the name comes from the Portuguese phrase Monte vi-o, meaning I see a mountain, as the first explorers supposedly spotted a hill, now known as Cerro de Montevideo. The other theory is that the Spanish noted the hill's position on a map as the sixth mountain from east to west, and from this, the city's name emerged. I'll add that the first theory has multiple flaws. Montevideo would translate awkwardly to something like mountain see this year, which doesn't make much sense in Portuguese, and the hill in question is only 132 meters high, not easily mistaken for a mountain. Even Uruguay's highest point, the Cerro Catedral, is a mere 514 meters. The Himno Nacional is recognized as the world's longest national anthem. The 4.5-minute piece was composed in 1845 by Francisco José de Bali, a Hungarian-born composer who settled in Uruguay. De Bali was born in 1791 in present-day Romania and served as a musician in the Austrian army until 1820. He later lived in Leipzig and Vienna, then became a conductor in the Saxon Kingdom's military band. With his Italian wife, he set out for Brazil, but due to a yellow fever epidemic, their ship was denied docking, and they landed in Montevideo, where he secured a position in a local orchestra. In his new homeland, he became renowned as a conductor and composer, leading to his commission to set to music the national anthem written by poet Francisco Acuna de Figueroa.
The idea that someone spotted a 132-meter hill and thought, yep, that's a mountain, is peak optimism. Imagine explorers getting hyped over such a tiny hill. Either they had very low expectations or just really wanted to name something. And if the second theory about it being the sixth hill on a map is true, and it sounds like someone was running out of creative names fast, let's just go with the sixth one. Good enough. Uruguay's claim to fame with the world's longest national anthem is impressive, though. Imagine everyone standing through all 4.5 minutes at events, politely pretending not to check their watches. Meanwhile, Dibali's life story feels like the plot of an epic road movie, starting in Romania, passing through Austria and Brazil, and ending with him conducting an orchestra in Montevideo like a musical Forrest Gump. The text leans too much on playful speculation without giving enough credit to the significance of Montevideo's origins. The first theory about Montevideo may have translation issues, but dismissing it quickly feels rushed, as legends often carry cultural meaning beyond linguistic precision. Also, referring to Cerro Catedral's modest height with a sense of dismissal overlooks that geography matters differently, depending on context. Not every nation has the Alps or Andes, and small elevations can still carry local importance. Dibali's fascinating life story could be unpacked more deeply. It is not every day that a Hungarian-born composer with ties to multiple countries shapes the national identity of a South American nation. The story of the national anthem reflects a rich intersection of global migration, art, and politics that deserves more weight. Montevideo's story offers a glimpse into how names and meanings are shaped by exploration, memory, and migration. The blend of Portuguese, Spanish, and local references reflects the layers of history embedded in a place. While the hill may be small by global standards, its significance lies more in what it symbolizes to those who first arrived. Similarly, Dibali's journey to Uruguay is a reminder that personal stories and global histories are deeply intertwined. His path, marked by war, love, and music, highlights the unexpected ways individuals can influence national narratives. The anthem he composed, while long, symbolizes more than just duration. It captures Uruguay's sense of identity, resilience, and openness to cultural contributions from far-flung places.
Uruguay is the most digitally advanced country in South America and the first in the world to provide laptops for all school children. It also boasts the highest literacy rate on the continent, with over 98% of adults able to read and write. Uruguay's telecommunications network is 100% digital, and the internet penetration rate is among the highest in the region, with nearly 90% of the population having access. Uruguay ranks first in Latin America and 25th globally in the Electronic Government Development Index. Although coffee culture is growing, Uruguay's traditional drink is still mate. This caffeine-containing tea made from yerba mate leaves originates from the Guarani people. The plant grows in the Paraná and Paraguay river basins, spanning Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. Mate is brewed from the dried leaves and stems of the plant. Drinking it requires special equipment, including a mate gourd and a metal straw with a filter called a bombilla. More than 60% of Uruguayans regularly drink mate. Every October in Uruguay, El Día del Patrimonio, Heritage Day, is held to celebrate and preserve the country's cultural heritage. Hundreds of historical buildings, museums, and other public institutions open their doors to visitors free of charge, with even factories and private companies often participating. Held annually since 1995, Heritage Day is immensely popular, attracting over 500,000 visitors each year.
Laptops for every kid sounds great until you realize the kids probably know more about troubleshooting tech than their parents. Uruguay is out here handing out laptops like Oprah, while other countries are still debating whether textbooks are too expensive. And with 98% literacy, it's safe to assume no one gets away with spelling mistakes on WhatsApp. Mate culture sounds cool until you realize it requires the same amount of gear as a camping trip. Gourd, bombilla, yerba leaves, all just for tea. But hey, with 60% of the population drinking it, Uruguay is clearly running on leaf-powered energy. As for Heritage Day, only Uruguay could make factories sound like fun places to visit. 500,000 visitors? That's like if every single person in Iceland decided to go sightseeing on the same day. The focus on Uruguay's digital achievements feels like a success story, but lacks critical exploration of potential challenges. Providing laptops to all school children is impressive, but how well has it been integrated into the education system? High literacy and internet penetration are fantastic, but what about rural areas or marginalized communities? Does everyone benefit equally? The description of mate simplifies its cultural role, reducing it to just an exotic drink rather than addressing its deeper significance in social interactions and daily life. Heritage Day sounds impressive, but the numbers don't tell us how Uruguayans engage with their heritage beyond this annual event. Uruguay's example of blending technological progress with tradition shows that development is not just about adopting the latest trends, but also preserving what matters. Giving laptops to children is a meaningful investment in the future, emphasizing education and equality. Mate is more than a drink. It's a ritual, a shared experience that builds community. Heritage Day reflects the importance of collective memory, offering a way for Uruguayans to reconnect with their past and take pride in their identity. The mix of progress and tradition reveals a society that understands the value of both the old and the new, creating a sense of continuity in a rapidly changing world.
A significant figure relative to the country's population, Uruguay's beef is of excellent quality and is sought after worldwide. This South American country accounts for 5% of the world's beef exports, ranking 9th in the world. There are 48,900 cattle farms nationwide, more than half of which are family-owned. The number of cattle is estimated at 11.7 million, or about 3 for each Uruguayan resident. Growth hormone use has been banned since 1962 and antibiotics since 2011, enhancing the quality of Uruguay's beef. According to the FAO, Uruguay has the world's highest proportion of land devoted to agriculture, with over 80% of its total area used for agricultural purposes. Between 2010 and 2015, Uruguay had the world's poorest yet most humble head of state. José Mujica, affectionately known as Pepe by his compatriots, was once a member of the left-wing guerrilla group Tupamaros. During the Uruguayan military dictatorship, he spent 14 years in prison as a political detainee. After his election as president, he chose not to move into the presidential residence and continued living on his farm in the outskirts of Montevideo with his wife and his 3-legged dog. He donated 90% of his presidential salary, equivalent to 2.5 million Hungarian forints, to civil organizations. When not using public transport, he would commute in his old Volkswagen Beetle.
Having 3 cows for every Uruguayan sounds like a barbecue waiting to happen. Uruguay must be the only place where the cows outnumber people and the beef might just have a better travel record than some citizens. With almost 50,000 cattle farms, half of them family-owned, I bet family reunions there involve more mooing than awkward small talk. And José Mujica, what a guy. He didn't just skip the presidential mansion, he downgraded to a farm with a 3-legged dog. Imagine trying to complain about your day to that guy. He'd probably remind you how he survived 14 years in prison and made friends with gorillas and livestock. The text paints a romanticized picture of Uruguay's beef production but doesn't address the environmental consequences of having 80% of the land devoted to agriculture. While banning growth hormones and antibiotics is great for quality, there's no mention of how sustainable this level of cattle farming is for the environment. Uruguay's reliance on beef exports raises questions about diversification in its economy and vulnerability to market shifts. The section on Mujica is heartwarming, but it feels more like a human interest story than a deeper exploration of his policies or the legacy he left behind. Uruguay's commitment to quality over quantity with its beef reflects a culture that values tradition and authenticity. The absence of antibiotics and hormones symbolizes a respect for natural processes, showing that progress doesn't always mean cutting corners. Mujica's life story offers profound lessons on humility, service, and leadership. His decision to stay on his farm reminds us that power doesn't have to corrupt, and that happiness can be found in simplicity. By living modestly, he embodied values that transcend politics, offering a powerful example to leaders around the world. Uruguay's mix of grounded traditions and extraordinary individuals shows that greatness can thrive in the most unassuming places.
The Rio de la Plata forms a funnel-shaped indentation between Argentina and Uruguay at the mouth of the Uruguay and Paraná rivers on the Atlantic coast. Some geographers consider it a bay, others a marginal sea, some an estuary, and others still a river. If viewed as a river, it is the world's widest, with a maximum width of 240 kilometers. From the river's confluence to the ocean, it stretches 270 kilometers. Uruguay's capital, Montevideo, is on the northern shore of the estuary, while Buenos Aires, Argentina's capital, is on the southwestern shore. The Rio de la Plata region is the birthplace of tango, a dance style that has gained worldwide popularity. Originally, tango was the music and dance of the lower social classes in Buenos Aires and Montevideo suburbs. Its origins remain debated, but it likely drew influences from the Argentine folk milonga and the candombe music of black slaves. Tango became one of the 20th century's most popular music styles. In Argentina and Uruguay alone, tens of thousands of tango songs were written, performed by hundreds of bands. After jazz, it was arguably the most prolific genre of the era.
The Rio de la Plata sounds like the body of water with a severe identity crisis. Bay, estuary, river, or marginal sea, geographers can't seem to make up their minds. If it's really the world's widest river, it must also have the widest margin for error in geography. 240 kilometers across? That's not a river. That's a relationship issue between two countries. And Montevideo and Buenos Aires sitting across from each other on this giant watery couch makes it feel like one long, awkward standoff. At least they got tango out of it. Calling the Rio de la Plata both a river and an estuary creates ambiguity. It would be helpful to clarify why these different definitions persist and how it affects ecological or geopolitical discussions. While the story of tango is captivating, the text simplifies its complex history and social significance. Tango was more than just a product of folk and slave music. It was also shaped by immigration waves and reflected the struggles of marginalized communities. The narrative feels incomplete without addressing the tension between how the upper classes initially rejected tango before it became mainstream. Additionally, there is no mention of how the music evolved across different eras or what has become of the genre today. The Rio de la Plata serves as more than just a physical divider. It's a symbol of cultural connection between Uruguay and Argentina. Tango emerging from the shared struggles of the lower classes shows that beauty can arise from hardship, and art can transcend borders. The evolution of tango from a marginalized genre to a global phenomenon reflects the power of cultural exchange. It stands as a reminder that music can carry the collective memories and emotions of a people, even as it evolves into something new. Like the Rio de la Plata itself, tango's identity has shifted over time, showing that art and geography are not confined to rigid definitions, but remain fluid and open to interpretation.
Punta del Este is Uruguay's most famous resort town, often called the Saint-Tropez of South America. Its main attractions are its two beautiful beaches, Playa Mansa and Playa Brava. The elegant and exclusive resort draws numerous celebrities and wealthy tourists. The town's symbol is the La Mano statue, a hand emerging from the sand on Playa Brava, created by Mario Irarrázaval in 1982. The area is home to luxury hotels, restaurants, casinos, and exclusive shops that attract visitors primarily during the summer months from November to March. Uruguay places great emphasis on renewable energy sources. 98% of the country's electricity comes from renewable sources, primarily solar, wind, and hydropower from 4 hydroelectric plants. The use of nuclear energy has been banned since 1997. Today, fossil fuels are imported mainly for industrial use and as fuel. In December 2013, Uruguay became the first country in the world to legalize the recreational sale, cultivation, and distribution of cannabis. Unlike profit-oriented commercial models, the government controls production and bans all forms of advertising. Uruguayan citizens can buy and grow marijuana in limited quantities for personal use. The legalization was expected to curb drug trafficking and reduce crime.
Calling Punta del Este the Saint-Tropez of South America feels like telling your cousin they look just like Ryan Gosling. It's flattering, but everyone knows they're still your cousin. The La Mano statue rising out of the sand is a perfect metaphor for tourists. People crawling out of vacation oblivion, desperately clutching for sun, fun, and overpriced cocktails. Celebrities and the wealthy flock to this town, proving that no matter where you go, someone will always find a reason to spend $10 on sparkling water. The text paints a rosy picture of Punta del Este, but it overlooks the environmental and social costs of maintaining such high-end tourism. Luxury hotels, casinos, and exclusive shops may attract visitors, but they also bring economic inequality and rising property prices, potentially displacing locals. The focus on summer months also suggests the area may face seasonal unemployment. While Uruguay's achievements in renewable energy are commendable, a more nuanced discussion could explore how these advances are balanced with tourism's environmental footprint, particularly in a high-consumption town like Punta del Este. Uruguay's leadership in renewable energy and cannabis legalization reflects a forward-thinking society willing to experiment with unconventional solutions. 98% of electricity coming from renewable sources shows how ambitious energy policies can have real-world impact. Legalizing cannabis and banning advertising demonstrates a cautious, socially responsible approach, prioritizing public health over corporate profits. The move to curb drug trafficking through legalization acknowledges the limitations of punitive models and represents a shift toward harm reduction. These policies highlight Uruguay's unique ability to balance innovation with social responsibility, making it a country that leads by example in more ways than one.
After Argentina, Uruguay is the second most successful football nation globally, with 19 football trophies. They have won the World Cup twice, one of which was the very first Football World Cup held in 1930. They are 15-time Copa America champions and won Olympic gold in football in 1924 and 1928. Uruguay even has an official football anthem played before every match of the national team. However, it should be noted that since 2011, they haven't achieved any major international success, leaving fans hoping for the glorious days to return. The small, sleepy fishing village of Jose Ignacio, a 3-hour drive from Montevideo, has long attracted visitors primarily with its beaches. By the 2020s, it transformed into an important art hub, attracting art buyers from as far as New York. The resort, with only 300 permanent residents, is also home to some of Uruguay's best restaurants, including Parador La Huella, which is ranked among the top 50 restaurants in Latin America. Its atmosphere is both elegant and relaxed, making it a top favorite among both local and international tourists. Wool production, rooted in centuries-old traditions, is a key sector of Uruguay's economy. The country ranks among the world's top 20 producers, exporting high-quality products to numerous countries. Favorable climate and geographical conditions, outdoor grazing, and high animal welfare standards help maintain the superior quality of Uruguayan wool.
Claiming Uruguay as the second most successful football nation feels a bit like calling someone the second best baker at a family reunion. Impressive, yes, but there's always that cousin who baked something even better. Uruguayans must hang on to that 1930 World Cup win like it happened yesterday, though it might be time to dust off that trophy case. The football anthem is a nice touch. Imagine if every national team had to play a theme song, like pro wrestlers walking into the ring. And here comes Uruguay, with the soundtrack of hope and nostalgia. While Jose Ignacio is presented as a picturesque art hub, the transformation from a sleepy fishing village to a posh resort raises questions about gentrification. The influx of international art buyers and tourists might benefit some locals, but how sustainable is it for a tiny community with just 300 residents? Small towns often struggle to retain their identity under tourism-driven development. The narrative glosses over what happens when locals are priced out of their own neighborhoods or when seasonal tourism dries up. Balance is everything, and the challenge is ensuring that charm isn't eroded by commercialization. Uruguay's focus on high-quality wool production is a refreshing reminder that not all global exports have to revolve around technology or mass-produced goods. Centuries-old traditions, outdoor grazing, and humane treatment of animals are valuable not only to the industry, but also to the environment. This approach reflects Uruguay's ability to merge tradition with modern standards, setting an example for countries with similar agricultural sectors. Wool may not grab international headlines like football or luxury resorts, but it's a quiet, essential thread in the country's economic and cultural fabric.
Santa Teresa National Park, a coastal forest area in Rocha County, has sandy beaches alternating with protected areas that host various animal species. There's also a greenhouse built in 1939 that contains plants from every continent in the world. Cabo Polonio National Park is known for its migrating sand dunes, marine wildlife, and iconic lighthouse. Quebrada de los Cuervos was the country's first nature reserve, designated in 1986, and its stunning landscapes with forested deep valleys and diverse wildlife offer some of the best hiking trails in the country. Colonia del Sacramento, Uruguay's oldest city and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was a major focal point of historical rivalry between Portuguese and Spanish colonizers. With its cobbled streets, old buildings, and coastal setting, the historic city center is also a popular tourist destination. The Portuguese architectural style of the 17th century blends with Spanish influences, and most of the old town's houses are over 300 years old. Azores de Farrapos y Islas is a crucial habitat on the lower part of the Uruguay River, encompassing the Farrapos Lagoons and 24 islands in the river. The area is home to 25% of Uruguay's bird species. The Farrapos Lagoons shelter a total of 130 fish species, 14 amphibians, 104 birds, and 15 mammals, including the maned wolf. Despite its name, this animal is not actually a wolf, but South America's largest canid, resembling a long-legged fox.
Santa Teresa National Park sounds like it's trying to please both beach bums and animal lovers. If they ever run out of activities, visitors can always wander through the 1939 greenhouse, a place where jet-lagged plants from every continent meet for an awkward floral convention. Imagine being a local squirrel dodging eucalyptus leaves from Australia and palm fronds from the Caribbean. The real challenge must be figuring out what to do first, soak up the sun or check out the international plant VIPs. Claiming that Colonia del Sacramento was a focal point of rivalry between Portuguese and Spanish colonizers makes it sound romantic, but historical conflicts rarely look that charming up close. Colonialism usually left behind more than picturesque cobblestone streets. While the blended architectural styles are fascinating, they reflect deeper tensions that shaped South America's history. Presenting the city only as a tourist destination risks minimizing those underlying stories. Tourists can admire the 300-year-old houses, but it's also worth considering who built them and why. The maned wolf being mistaken for a wolf feels oddly fitting. It's as if evolution played a prank by dressing a fox in stilt pants. The diversity in the Esteros de Farrapos y Islas reminds us how interconnected ecosystems are. Each of those 130 fish species plays a role, just as each bird, amphibian, and mammal contributes to the balance. Protecting such much biodiversity ensures that future generations can witness these unique creatures. The maned wolf, with its striking appearance, symbolizes that nature is not just functional, but also wonderfully weird.
Uruguay has one of the most advanced education systems in South America. Education has always been a priority in Uruguay, where free and compulsory primary education was introduced as early as the 1870s, over 150 years ago. Public schools are accessible to all children at no cost, and the Uruguayan government places particular emphasis on teacher training. As part of the education system's modernization, textbooks have been replaced by laptops, provided free to all students by their schools. Uruguay has several national parks and nature reserves. Santa Teresa National Park, a coastal forest area in Rocha County, has sandy beaches alternating with protected areas that host various animal species. There's also a greenhouse built in 1939 that contains plants from every continent in the world. Cabo Polonio National Park is known for its migrating sand dunes, marine wildlife, and iconic lighthouse. Quebrada de los Cuervos was the country's first nature reserve, designated it in 1986, and its stunning landscapes with forested deep valleys and diverse wildlife offer some of the best hiking trails in the country. Colonia del Sacramento, Uruguay's oldest city and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was a major focal point of historical rivalry between Portuguese and Spanish colonizers. With its cobbled streets, old buildings, and coastal setting, the historic city center is also a popular tourist destination. The Portuguese architectural style of the 17th century blends with Spanish influences, and most of the old town's houses are over 300 years old. Azores de Farrapos Islas is a crucial habitat on the lower part of the Uruguay River, encompassing the Farrapos Lagoons and 24 islands in the river. The area is home to 25% of Uruguay's bird species. The Farrapos Lagoons shelter a total of 130 fish species, 14 amphibians, 104 birds, and 15 mammals, including the maned wolf. Despite its name, this animal is not actually a wolf, but South America's largest canid, resembling a long-legged fox.
Laptops for everyone? Back in my day, the closest thing we had to a free computer was the chalkboard and a teacher with great calligraphy. While the move to provide laptops is commendable, it raises questions about whether every student has access to consistent internet and the support needed to make full use of digital tools. Uruguay's commitment to free, modernized education is impressive, especially with a system that prioritizes teacher training. Empowering educators alongside students can create a sustainable model for other countries looking to modernize their own educational practices. Santa Teresa National Park sounds like it's trying to please both beach bums and animal lovers. If they ever run out of activities, visitors can always wander through the 1939 greenhouse, a place where jet-lagged plants from every continent meet for an awkward floral convention. Imagine being a local squirrel dodging eucalyptus leaves from Australia and palm fronds from the Caribbean. The real challenge must be figuring out what to do first: soak up the sun or check out the international plant VIPs. Claiming that Colonia del Sacramento was a focal point of rivalry between Portuguese and Spanish colonizers makes it sound romantic, but historical conflicts rarely look that charming up close. Colonialism usually left behind more than picturesque cobblestone streets. While the blended architectural styles are fascinating, they reflect deeper tensions that shaped South America's history. Presenting the city only as a tourist destination risks minimizing those underlying stories. Tourists can admire the 300-year-old houses, but it's also worth considering who built them and why. The maned wolf being mistaken for a wolf feels oddly fitting. It's as if evolution played a prank by dressing a fox in stilt pants. The diversity in the Azores de Farrapos Islas reminds us how interconnected ecosystems are. Each of those 130 fish species plays a role, just as each bird, amphibian, and mammal contributes to the balance. Protecting such much biodiversity ensures that future generations can witness these unique creatures. The maned wolf, with its striking appearance, symbolizes that nature is not just functional, but also wonderfully weird.
Montevideo's carnival is one of the world's longest running, lasting from mid-January to the end of February. During the event, colorful parades and shows take place over several weeks in the capital. Alongside the classic attractions, the carnival has some unusual traditions, such as people frequently splashing each other with water during the celebrations. One of the most famous events of the parade is the Lamadas, which showcases the Afro-Uruguayan candombe music and dance style. Candombe is a music style of African origin that has been an important part of Uruguayan culture for over 200 years. It was brought to Uruguay by slaves from Africa and still plays a central role in the country's musical culture. In the past, Afro-Uruguayans would light fires and dance to candombe music every Sunday and on special occasions like New Year's Eve, Christmas, January 6th, Feast of St. Balthazar, or St. Benedict's Day. The music's rhythm is created using 3 drums: the tambor piano, tambor chico, and tambor repique. Uruguay has a strong tradition of equestrian culture, particularly the gaucho lifestyle. The gauchos, or the horsemen and herders of the South American pampas, symbolize the country's rural or village culture. Many Uruguayans take pride in the gaucho traditions and participate in annual gaucho celebrations and rodeos.
A carnival that lasts 6 weeks is either the world's longest party or a very elaborate excuse to avoid doing chores. The water splashing tradition sounds fun until you realize that the guy who just soaked you had no idea about personal boundaries. Imagine running late to a meeting in Montevideo during carnival season and someone drenches you. You'd have to walk in like, I wasn't late, I was just baptized. Highlighting the roots of Candombe and slavery shows the complexity behind Uruguay's cultural heritage. The fact that a form of music brought by enslaved people has become such a beloved part of the country's identity speaks to both resilience and cultural preservation. Celebrations like the Lamadas are not just events, but living stories, passed down through generations. Still, these festivities can risk becoming performative if people forget to reflect on the struggles that gave birth to the traditions. The gaucho lifestyle paints an image of freedom, hard work, and a deep connection with nature, but there's also an element of romanticizing rural life. The yearly rodeos and equestrian celebrations may celebrate tradition, but they can also overshadow the fact that gaucho culture evolved from a tough, often marginalized existence. Yet, in a modernizing world, there is something reassuring about knowing that some people still keep these traditions alive, maintaining a connection to the land and history that can be easily lost in urban life.
The chivito is Uruguay's national dish. It's essentially a large sandwich made of steak, ham, cheese, fried egg, tomato, lettuce, and mayonnaise. It's usually served with French fries and often includes added toppings like fried bacon or grilled peppers. Another typical Uruguayan dish is Martin Fierro, named after a gaucho literary hero. It consists of a slice of salty hard manchego cheese and a slice of quince jelly known as dulce de membrillo. José Enrique Rodó is considered Uruguay's most significant writer. Among the recognized figures of Uruguayan literature is Mario Benedetti, who was an incredibly prolific writer. He published 12 short story collections, 4 plays, 9 novels, 36 poetry collections, and 16 essay collections. One of these, the novel Thank You for the Fire, is available in Hungarian. Uruguayans' favorite reads include the so-called historias, comic books often blending humor and fantasy with subtle social criticism. And finally, here's an interesting fact that, in my opinion, is rather morbid. An Uruguayan-Argentine couple, Victor Hugo Peralta and his wife Gabriela, hold the record for the most body modifications for a married couple, a title they earned in 2012. By then, they had 77 modifications combined, but by 2023, this had increased to 91. Their new modifications include eyeball tattoos, piercings, and Victor even had a piece of his ear removed. Some may consider me old-fashioned, but to be honest, I'm not convinced that all Uruguayans feel pure joy when their country is identified by such a record.
The chivito is the kind of sandwich that sounds like it was invented by someone who just couldn't decide what they wanted and thought, why not have everything? It's like a dare between chefs. I bet you can't fit steak, ham, and an egg into one sandwich. The French fries on the side are almost an afterthought, as if the meal wasn't already ambitious enough. Eating one probably requires a nap afterward, or at minimum, a waiver from your cardiologist. The Martin Fierro dish feels elegant in its simplicity, though it's hard to imagine a gaucho literary hero dreaming of quince jelly between cattle drives. On the other hand, Uruguay's love for literature is genuinely impressive, especially considering Benedetti's output. Publishing that many works almost feels unfair. Did the man ever take a weekend off? Though comic books blending humor and social critique suggest that Uruguayans have found clever ways to engage with important issues. But there's also the subtle irony in all this productivity. Despite having these literary giants, the nation still holds records for the most modified married couple. Eyeball tattoos and removed ear parts are, without a doubt, conversation starters, though probably not for everyone at dinner parties. While body modifications are a personal choice, there's a fine line between artistic expression and shock value. It's hard not to wonder whether people see this record as an exciting representation of individuality or a reminder of humanity's most bizarre impulses. Regardless of opinions, there's something striking about a culture that can produce both poetic masterpieces and headline-grabbing body art. Maybe it reflects a nation comfortable with all forms of self-expression. That wraps up this episode of the Wise Visitors Collection. Of course, you loved it, so stay tuned for more adventures. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment, and hit that bell to stay notified when the subsequent episode drops. Feel free to reach out. We respond to every email as soon as possible. And if you're feeling generous, you can buy me a coffee using the link below. We invite all Wise Visitors Collection enthusiasts to join our free Telegram community and be part of the conversation. All the best.